Welcome to Compression, the quest to $100 million in just 1 year. Join me, your host, Logan Freeman, in this one-of-a-kind interactive podcast experience where I am on a quest to compress 3 years of achievement and production into 12 months. And no, the answer is not to just work harder. I'm bringing you not only ideas and concepts that are complete at the theoretical level, but they're also effective at the applied level. Look, guys, knowledge is not power. It is potential power. Knowledge plus massive strategic action equals power. We're talking about strategy, systems, accountability, all in real time. This is Compression. We're back with another episode of the Compression Podcast. We're sitting here in the middle of April, and I just got back from Colorado. I put a video up on LinkedIn about, stepping back and getting a little perspective, right? Just getting a little bit of recalibration into the mind, into the soul, into the spirit. And, I wouldn't really call this vacation relaxing, but if you remember back in December, we were talking about mini vacations and that I was committed to creating time that I was going to spend away from, working and the grind. And, I'm proud to say that we did that. I took the kiddos and my wife out to Colorado. We had a great time out there. Like I mentioned before we started recording, I probably will not drive another 10 or 11 hours with the kiddos in the car right now with their ages. But we did it and we got there safe and we got back and had a little perspective. So, on my way out there and on the way back, I, utilized some time to get away from the crying in the back seat with Audible. And one of the books that I read, I started 2 books. The first one was Conspiracy by Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite authors. It tells the story about Peter Thiel and Gawker. And it's a very interesting perspective on this whole scenario. But I didn't get past chapter 2 on that because I was so enthralled, obsessed, and really moved by Matthew McConaughey's new book, Greenlights. And that is the theme today, this week, is Greenlights. That's going to be the name of this episode. So what you're going to get out of this episode here today is how I'm thinking about the art of living and making sure that what you're doing is not just a means to the end. And there were so many times in that book I had to pause, make a note, and look something up whenever we stopped driving because, he's a very philosophical type of guy, which I wasn't really aware of. But whenever you've been journaling for 36 years and you go to read all of those journals, I think you're going to be pretty philosophical. And I really appreciate the work that he put together. So we're going to talk about Greenlights today and the art of living and making sure that, what you're doing on a regular basis is just not a means to an end. And look, guys, I'm like committed now to figuring out how to enjoy. And I say enjoy because it means in joy. So you're creating joy in what you're doing on a regular basis and being able to find that silver lining in whatever you're doing. And if you're not enjoying it, then it's a really a serious kind of contemplation that you need to go through. 1, it's the wrong thing, or 2, you don't have the right mindset around it. And so Jerome, my man, we're going to be talking about Greenlights today. I don't think you've read the book yet, but I highly recommend listening to that book because he reads it and it's fantastic. But what's up with you, man? How you doing this week?
Amazing, brother. Amazing. I'm a fan of Matthew. I really like his talks. He gets really to the point, right? But fills it up, makes it full with great stories.
Yeah.
So I know that book's phenomenal. I'll add it to the list. Right now I'm working through John Lee Dumas's book and I'm turning the pages and I'm writing in the margins and really just trying to get the tactics out of it and figure out how much of it is really, lead magnet stuff versus really implementable.
Yep.
And I'm also taking a deep dive on Marshall Silver. And I think I shared one of those videos with you, but if not, I'll do it right after this. And the big metaphor, the big takeaway from the past 7 days really has been, is the magnet close enough to the metal to attract it?
Mm.
And what that's really just getting into is you got to get out your comfort zone, right? To get to the thing so that you can have the stuff come to you. You can have a magnet, but if it's too far away from what you're trying to attract, there will be no movement. But as soon as you get in the field, it'll pull.
Mm-hmm.
So Marshall Silver is a hypnotist. He brands himself as the greatest closer from stage in the world. And he said he's willing to learn from anybody if they can do it better than him. And so I'm digging in on Marshall. I did it before, but I've come back out and with new perspective going back in. And it's just the way they phrase stuff. And you actually do a great job of this, man. It's in the positioning. He calls his home in Las Vegas a palace.
Yeah.
Right. He says, I live in a 17,000 square foot palace.
And it's a big palace.
He talks about, his automobile, which is a Rolls Royce Phantom. And he just kind of goes down the list. But that letter you put out to your list from the chief development officer puts you kind of in the same vein. And the way that you articulate the message is extremely important.
Yeah.
Right. You can come up with this great idea, but if you can't communicate it to anybody,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely doesn't matter. And so I look forward to getting into Greenlights and learning more from Matthew. And I'll send you the stuff with Marshall because it's aggressive and
all right,
it's pushing things in the right direction for sure.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what Greenlights are and what they mean. And I'm not going to steal Matthew's thunder, but I do want to set this up because I think it moves directly into the previous 7 days. So Greenlights mean go, advance, continue. In our lives, they're affirmation of our way. They're approvals, support, praise, cash, health, success, sustainability, and the list goes on and on. But green lights can also be disguised as yellow or red lights. And sometimes red lights actually give us what we need. And I talk about this a lot. And I sent this text message to somebody. No, I didn't text it to you. I put it on LinkedIn. But one of my favorite quotes is, sometimes breakdowns are breakthroughs in disguise. And when I heard that from wherever, I read it somewhere, I really had to stop and think about that. And it was right at that time where, 7 or 8 years ago, where I was going through kind of a big breakdown in my own life. But this is an interesting concept because catching green lights is about skill. We can catch more green lights by simply identifying where the red ones are and changing course to avoid them. And he gives kind of 3 ways to deal with red lights. And I want to talk about those because this is emotional intelligence. Matthew is a Southern boy and, grew up. His father was from Mississippi. They lived in New Orleans, but they actually moved all the kids and he grew up in Texas and his mom's from Pennsylvania. And just wait till you hear how he opens this story. But, so many things that I hear Matthew talking about, he didn't read all of these books. He took the same threads that all these books have in them, but he got them from his father. And he got them from his brothers. And it got me thinking about how I want to, live my life in a way that incorporates those types of success principles, I will say, or values. He calls them values that his dad really put him in there. Now, his dad implemented them in a very, very interesting way. And I'm not going to say it was the right way, but obviously it worked out. I mean, Matthew is very successful. And both of his brothers were extremely successful as well. And they come from absolutely nothing. And it's a fun story to read. But again, I'm not going to steal that thunder, but 3 ways to respond to a red light. They can be difficult to tackle and overcome, but there's 3 ways. You have to persist, you push on, you pivot, you change the way that you do things, or you concede and you wave the white flag. And so I like that because, it's the same thing that I think about when it's act, assess, adjust, right? It's you observe what's going on after you take some action, and then you assess kind of where to go. And so these green lights in life, catching these green lights, I put a post up about this book and it went crazy on LinkedIn. And obviously it's very popular, but luck is another thing that I've been thinking a lot about and reading about. Naval, that episode was fire. I hope that's out. I think it's out. Yeah,
it's out.
It's out. That episode was awesome. But I'm continuing to read the book that Eric put together about Naval, and he talks about luck. And we'll get into that. There's 3 different types of luck at some point. We'll have an episode on luck. But my definition of luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And so when these green lights pop into your life, you got to be ready. You got to be able to see them. You got to be able to take action on them. And if there's something else blocking you, if there's another yellow light or a red light that's going on that's hindering all of the other green lights, you got to attack that first. And so you got to stop the bleeding so you can move forward and heal. And so when I think about this green lights concept, I was driving back and I finished the book. I started trying to tell Taylor about the book because I was so excited, and the kids were just going crazy. So we couldn't really have a conversation about it. But I got back and said, man, I'm going to have to really dive into some of these books or some of the book's concepts. And this was one of my favorite ones because, when I got back on Monday, that was when I knew Tuesday I had my broker's test. I needed to pass and I needed to get through that. So, preparation is what I'm key at and what I'm really good at. And so I sat, we got back at 5:30 that night, tired. I drove the whole way, 11 hours, and I got up at 3 and I got through all of my pre-training again. I did it again. I did it again. And I did it again. 250 questions, 25 simulations, and I got there and I passed through there. So that was a green light, because that green light is now opening up a lot of other opportunities for us. The other green light that happened, and while we were driving back as well, I start to see because I try to stay off my email, but I start to see email, man. I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? Well, I remembered that I sat down with the Kansas City Business Journal again, and they did an article on FTW, and oh my gosh, like it was like the green light had been turned on and everybody was driving through. So email was just, people reaching out to us, vendors, investors, all of this stuff. And then, we had some transactions. We closed 3 transactions in the last 7 days. We've got 2 or 3 more closing in the next 7 days. So all those things are good green lights. But what I'm not trying to say, just focusing on all of these wins, what I'm trying to say is those green lights, and Matthew talks about this in the book, but those green lights can create a red light in and of themselves if you're not ready for them and you're not ready to accept them in the right way, because those green lights for me actually create way more work, way more time that I have to spend with other folks. And so as I'm seeing all this stuff happen, I'm driving back, I'm like, man, I really need to be on my email. I just said, stop. You're going through a green light right now. Enjoy it. And Matthew's very adamant about enjoying your successes and celebrating your wins throughout the book. And so I said, you know what? All that's awesome. All that's good. But I got the 3 most important people in my life in this car with me right now, and I'm going to enjoy this green light. And so, it was sometimes things hit you right whenever you need them, or, maybe whenever you don't think you need them and something hits you, maybe like the book that you're reading right now. But, I was so ready for some other book other than, another business book to read that this just hit me right in the right spot. And it got me really thinking about this concept of green lights, red lights, yellow lights, and which is a mental model, by the way. So Matthew probably doesn't even know, or he does, but he doesn't call it a mental model. He calls it green light, red light, yellow light, because everybody can, compare their lives to that. So he's a master writer. He's an incredible writer. But the art of living is something that's very interesting to me. And because in that letter that I wrote that you mentioned earlier, I was talking about time, and I was talking about, time is a dichotomy. On one hand, it feels like the hours, the minutes, the that make up a day, they're so slow. But whenever you get back and look back your week, it's Friday at 12:30 here. I look back and I'm like, where'd the week go? Right? The time passes so fast. And so, you have to make sure that you're engaging in that time when you've got it, because it's not going to be there whenever you look back. And so instead of just thinking that something feels like the means to the end, these transactions are a means to the end, the article is means to the end, the broker test is a means to the end. I said, well, what if I just step back and really say, no, it's not a means to an end. This is the end for this scenario right now. And let's make this art. He talks about that self-expression. All self-expression is not art, but all art is self-expression. And so what I took away from that was just that the things that I'm doing in my life can be art. And I always forgot, when I was growing up, or not forgot, but I never really appreciated art. And looking at your work as art is interesting. That's one concept. But the more interesting concept is looking at your life like art. Looking at your life like art, and how you create or construct or paint every single thing that you're going through to make it beautiful. And so that's got me, really interested in how I construct time and what I'm focused on, and how I approach these different red lights, green lights, and yellow lights in my life. So that's what you're going to get out of this episode, if you haven't already. I went on a big tangent there. I never know where this is going to go, but I think people enjoy the beginning of these, because I start to flow. But that's kind of what's been going on my mind, man. And I'd love to hear some thoughts on your end about the green lights and the art of living.
Yeah. So let's back up to the beginning of the green lights. And so the question, there's a gap, right? There's a stimulus, and then there's a response or a reaction. But before the response or the reaction, there's a gap.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't know that there's a gap.
Yep.
In that gap, you get to decide what the thing that happened means for you. You get to decide.
That's right.
Nobody else. You get to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that gap, you were talking about act, assess, adjust. The only way that works is if you know that the gap exists.
Yep. Exactly.
If not,
right.
Then you're very much primitive. You're an animal, right? You're just going off instinct, and you're just doing whatever it takes in that moment to react to what happened. You can't be strategic if you are just reacting to something.
Mm-hmm.
You're a robot, a machine, an animal. And that is where the art actually happens, because you can create a narrative so that this thing serves you. I didn't plan on mentioning this at all in this episode, but this week is a week of high emotion for me. Lots of changes happened in this week last year for me, and part of it goes to the post that I made about David Goggins, and that came from Logan at a time where I had to have it, right? And so when you get to the place where you're willing to respond instead of react,
mm-hmm.
you are actually in control of what your future looks like.
Yeah.
Anytime you are reacting, anytime you're saying they made me, or pick whatever you want to insert there that gives control, gives responsibility to somebody else. And this is why Jocko's extreme ownership model is freeing for everybody. Anytime you give that to somebody else, they control you.
Yeah.
They control you. It can be as simple as them uttering a simple sentence to you.
Yep.
And now they made you do this. No, they didn't. You chose, unless you want to give all your power away. And I really appreciate you bringing this back up, because this has been intentional for you, and I'm glad you're hearing it from multiple ways.
Yep.
Enjoy the success and the wins. Enjoy the success and wins, and actually being present in it instead of just moving to the other place. And
that's right, man.
I think this is so different. And this is the difference between a compressor and a cleaner, because the cleaner just says, all right, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
you have to celebrate it, because what if there is nothing next? What if it's over?
That's right. And you will never enjoy what you've accomplished, right? I mean, so I'm starting, I hope people hear that, because you're listening to a guy that has been raised on achievement-based love and self-love by achievement as well. But you're hearing the progression from somebody who says, look, there is an art to this. And a big piece of that is understanding when to allow yourself to feel those wins. And maybe it took this book to, for a guy that's been writing in a journal for 36 years to get my eyes opened up to that. But I thought about this too whenever I was turning, how old am I, Jerome? I'm 31. 31. Yeah. And when I turned 31, I remember I looked at how many days that was, and I'm like, okay, well, at least I hope I at least got another 31, and if I want to have another 31, I want to make those the best 31 years that I absolutely can. And the only way to do that is to get these rooted, these principles rooted in your system, in your mind, ingrained. Look, I've got 31 years left. Probably most folks listening to this probably have somewhat similar time left on this planet, I would say. And you can create new threads, mental what are the synapses, right? Yeah, like the things that are firing, you can create those. It's going to take time though, but if you don't start now, then you can't do it later. I don't want to be the guy that's 55 years old or 65 years old and so set in his ways that I won't sell my Oldsmobile or something, and people aren't even driving cars anymore. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be somebody that's open to everything and attached to nothing. And that thread, reading Greenlights, was exactly what Matthew has gone through. The other thing that he's so open about is he's just vulnerable. That was the most vulnerable I think I've heard any celebrity ever be in his life. I mean, the stuff that he shared was I wouldn't have shared, So, and I know his platform is absolutely massive. And then he gets on podcasts and he backs it up. I mean, there's a lot of stories that he didn't tell in there, but there's reasoning behind everything that he wrote. And so one of the things, and we'll get to the regular programming of the Compression Podcast, but one thing that he does, he loves bumper stickers. I think this is hilarious, but there's a few bumper stickers that he shared that I took note on. And so I'm going to bring those up. The first one is, life, like architecture, is a verb. If designed well, it works. It's beautiful, and it needs no directions. It needs maintenance. And this is so hard for me to think through, because I'm always, goal, purpose, strategy, go, go, go. But if you read this book and you hear how he has constructed his life like architecture, like a verb, it had no direction. It needed maintenance because he was open to everything, chasing things down that, other folks would just write off. And I think that's the reason he calls this book Greenlights, because those were yellow lights or red lights in his life that he put time towards. And they created green lights for him. For example, this book, he spent 52 days in the desert, 40 of them without anything other than a generator, 12 of them with no electricity, to write this book. Who does that? Who does that? A guy that is willing to do whatever it takes to get the best out of himself. No distractions, no children, no electricity, in the desert, and wrote a book for 52 days. That's just crazy to me. But
is it, or is it the discipline of it all?
It's the discipline. In my mind, when I heard it, I'm like, man, I could never do that. By the end of the book, I'm like, I got to start doing things like that. So that's that mentality, though, of being open to everything and attached to nothing. And I'm really proud that this year I have not really told anybody, you're wrong. That's wrong. Yeah. You shouldn't do it that way. Yeah. I used to say, that's not going to work. You need to do it this way. And this is the only way. I'm like taking the approach now of that I can learn something from anybody, no matter who it is. It might be my 2-year-old daughter right there, let me hear your perspective and how you're going about it. Because as you get older, as you get wiser, the less you know. I think that's a quote that a lot of people say is, as you get older, the less I know, or as I get older, the less I know. And it's so true, because you're open to so much other information that you weren't previously. So I loved that bumper sticker, man. Life is like architecture is a verb. If designed well, it works. It needs no directions. It needs maintenance. Got any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, when you said the word maintenance, I immediately went to the 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I took a week off, and I just walked. I didn't run.
Yep.
And I got 5 minutes of exercise over the course of, I think it was like 40 miles that week or something crazy. And I remember when I used to think that was enough. But you look at heart rate, you look at weight, you look at all the things, that's maintenance for me.
Yeah.
Anymore, right? Maintenance for me is at a different level. And
Yep.
I think each time you move your life to that next level, the maintenance increases. And if I connect the dots right now, you think about buying a newer, nicer vehicle. It probably costs a little more to service that vehicle, the maintenance, than it does one that's just barely clucking along.
Right.
You may spend more in maintenance overall because the thing is older, not as new or as nice, but it absolutely costs more to, I got my Lamborghini Aventador up here, to change the oil in a Lamborghini Aventador than it does in the Toyota Camry.
That's right.
Right. And so are you all the way in on that? Because I think a lot of times we just look at, oh, this is good. Whoa. I think a lot of times we just look at the initial price, right? You go to you're surfing for your car online, you see all the pricing, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to get that one because that one's a great value. But what about the back end? What is it going to take on from a maintenance standpoint? We can both go get $21,000 cars. One might be a 2008 Mercedes Benz and another may be a brand new Kia, right? What is it going to cost to service those on the backside? And do you actually understand the cost of ownership for that life that you want to have? I think a lot of times people get in and they're like, oh yeah, I paid enough to get into this thing. But it's not about just getting the thing. It's about being able to keep it.
Yeah.
It's not about getting married. It's about having an amazing marriage where you're excited. I was just talking to a guy 2 calls before this, and he's been married for 40 years. Right?
Yep.
You don't just want to have the baby. You want the kid to go be a productive member of society.
That's right.
Right? You want your business not to start it, but to make money and potentially create generational wealth. And I'm going to pick at the real estate investors out there. You don't just want to buy a deal. You want to buy a profitable deal.
That's right.
That part was in your letter. The focus on making sure that we're buying things at the right cost basis so that we protect your investment.
That's right.
Because there's going to be some maintenance.
Oh yeah. Tons of maintenance, especially on the stuff that we buy. So another bumper sticker I want to go through. And this is I won't tell the story because it's too good. You got to go read the book, but it's not a risk unless you can lose the fight. And so when you're thinking about things, you're thinking about challenges in your life, and you're wondering why you're kind of just spinning your wheels. Ask yourself the last time that you could really lose something. When did you put yourself out there and try to accomplish something that if you did not, it wouldn't break you completely, but it would sting a little bit. It would hurt. It's not a risk unless you can lose the fight. And I think about this a lot in the real estate space, but I think about this a lot, honestly, with everything that I'm doing, interviews, where we've been talking about, I've got an upcoming one and there's a risk. I can lose that fight. There's a risk
there.
I won't lose that fight, but I could, right? So what am I doing? I'm preparing. I'm getting ready. I'm doing all of the things that I need to. but you have to put yourself out there. And my wife really commends me a lot for this. She said, I have a hard time, thinking about all the stuff that you do in relation to putting yourself out there. And I said, look, when you're humble enough to know that you're going to lose and you're going to get better and you're going to have setbacks and you're vulnerable enough to people that, and with yourself that you're not really that worried about what other people think, that's when you get to the point where you can start taking rest. But if you're worried about how you look, how it's going to feel, what other people are going to say about you, you're going to stay in that comfort zone. And this life about being a compressor is anything but comfortable, but it is anything but mediocre. It's everything about being one step or two steps ahead. So I loved that bumper sticker. I might try to get that one for maybe my car or something. My wife would probably rip it right off, but it's not a risk unless you can lose the fight. I loved that bumper sticker. I think that should be a mantra for all of us who are trying to strive to accomplish big things.
Dude, yeah. And so we talked about this in the last episode. When you said, I want to record my journey to
That's right.
$1 million and let people in on this journey, there's something at risk.
There's a big risk there.
Right? For both of us. Because I'm the guy that makes dreams happen.
That's right.
And so you can't tell me that you want the dream and then it not happen, right? And it's time bound. I mean, you talk about a SMART goal, it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is exciting. And I think if we were more public about what we were working on, instead of whispering or writing it in our journal and not letting anybody see it, we would be held to that standard of actually having to execute against these things.
One that I didn't quite understand fully, and I've thought a lot about that I was excited to ask you about, is this. The great man or woman, but we'll just say for the sake of this quote, the great man is not all to each. He is each to all. The genius can do anything, but does one thing at a time. Heck of a bumper sticker. A lot of the phrases that he uses, or bumper stickers or note to selves that he uses, they're dichotomies, and they kind of confuse me at first. And I was curious to know what you thought about that. The great man is not all to each. I think I understand that part, but he is each to all. Maybe now that I'm thinking about this slower, I'm getting it, but I wanted to hear your thoughts. The second part of that, I totally understand. The genius can do anything, but he does one thing at a time. He's not a jack of all trades necessarily. He's a master of one, right? But this part here, the great man is not all to each. He is each to all. What do you think that means?
You hit me cold. So I think a lot of people try to be everything, right? And I see this most in relationships, and it's level 2 of the red pill, but you want to be everything to your partner.
Yeah.
And you might not be the right person for that thing. And your ego makes you say, oh, well, I have to be, I better be, because if I'm not, then I'm inadequate in some way. But knowing, and we've talked about this in the past, knowing what your genius is and staying in your genius zone and doing that over and over and over again, and doing that for only the people that have that thing, that issue, that problem, allows you to be world renowned, right? That allows you to actually be the superhero. Superheroes can't do everything. All superheroes have that power, right? Somebody can fly, or somebody's technology, whatever it is. And I think you have a replica of you being a superhero, and hopefully when the little people get older, they'll get to see that, and they'll smile and say, my daddy's a superhero. And not just on this picture, but they'll know so in real life, right?
That's right.
But I don't think we, in our humble way, or actually believe that we have superpowers and that we are superheroes. Instead, we'd rather just be good at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think you might be doing the world a disservice if
Yeah.
you don't know what that thing is you're super special at, and people know to come to you for it. I'm not the person to come to for compassion when like you're down and out. But when you're ready to take over the world after you've had the pity party, mount up. I've got my sword and I've got my shield and I've got a couple of horses and we can go to battle. Right? But if somebody wants me to console them about why all these things happen to them instead of happening for them, I'm not the right person. Just as an example.
Yeah. I like that. Now I do understand this bumper sticker. I'm sorry, this is a note to self. He wrote this. It's not a bumper sticker, but you're not all to each, so you're not everything to everybody, but you do understand individualism, right? Which means, it's a talent from Strength Finders. It's my top talent, actually. And it's all about understanding where somebody is currently and what they need in the moment. And so if you're each to all, you're able to see that and what somebody needs and be that person in your best self for them. So I love that quote. It's a note to self, not a bumper sticker. We're going to stop talking about Greenlights. Go check the book out, read it. It's fantastic. If you can, listen to it because he obviously has a great speaking voice, so it'd be very fun to listen to that. The Art of Living is the concept this week. Catching green lights, turning yellows into reds is what this is all about. And a common theme and thread on this podcast, on this show, is all about self-awareness. And so the way that I stay self-aware is obviously doing these episodes here, being open to everything and attached to nothing, but also using my journals and sharing my journals and my learnings. And one of the things that, I'm doing obviously is continuing to build new habits. And so one of the new habits that I kind of wanted to mention to you guys is this metabolic fuel usage piece of my life and how it's impacted my energy and my weight and my health. And, understanding what my body is running off of. And so just a new habit, I just want to show everybody on this little lumen. I took this little lumen to Colorado. I've taken it to a few other places. Basically, I breathe into that thing every single morning and it tells me, hey, that I'm either burning fat or I'm burning carbs and what to kind of focus on that day. And so that was a new habit that I have created. And my wife seems to think that I have lost some decent amount of weight. I feel very energetic. I feel like I'm doing the right things in relation to eating. So that was one habit. The other habit is I got away from intermittent fasting for a long time. I put that back in my life, and not necessarily because I'm a big proponent of, hey, you should fast, but I'm a big proponent of discipline, and I'm a big eater. I got a big mouth. I got a big stomach. I got a big hands. So I can eat a lot of food. Let's just say that. But, if I'm serious with myself, I say, okay, well, sure, you can attempt to do portion control, but I fail at that. I have no temperance around portion control. So what do? What can I control? I can control not eating until noon every single day and stopping at 7 p.m. So if I wanted to, I could try to cram as much food in 7 hours that I can, but it really hurts your stomach. And I'm busy during 12 to 5. So it works out very well. So those two things have been very, very beneficial on the habit tracking for me, guys, as well as stepping back my steps from 10,000 back to 8,000. And I'll tell you why I did this. So one of the big, goals for the year was to be more active in the office. We're purchasing an office building and we have space there. We have employees. The Parker and Corey, my business partners, are there all the time. I need to be there more. I'm helping to lead the company. I need to be there for energy, for support, for collaboration. And, the 10,000 steps was keeping me from going into the office. I could not get my steps unless I would be walking throughout the day or took time after I wake up to actually go do that. So what I've done is back that up to 8,000 steps per day, which is still kind of a stretch goal, but I do hit it. And I implement, 3 weight training sessions that I'm willing to get. So instead of trying to go walk for 2 or 3 hours or run for an hour and a half, whatever it is, 2 hours. I say, look, get your weight training in, give yourself that time, but then just get active and get moving. If you can take a walking meeting, great. And instead of looking at 8,000 per day, shoot for 56,000 per week. And that allowed me flexibility. So it's hard on disciplines, soft on schedules. And those 4 things, kind of the lumen, intermittent fasting, changing up the step count, and then giving myself permission to have 3 full workouts for 30 to 45 minutes per day has allowed me to implement a new health routine. And the reason I'm telling you guys about this, and you, Jerome, is because I dubbed this year as 2 things: the year of health for Logan Freeman, and then the evolution of capital for our company. And both of those are happening. More to come on the second one. But I wanted to give you an update on kind of that piece. Like, I wasn't doing that stuff in December when we were talking about this. These are new things that are now ingrained into my life, and I'm healthier than I have been in the last 12 months. And so I just wanted to kind of give you guys an update on one of the new health, or it's more than one habit, but I stacked them, I stacked all of those habits. One, I said, hey, I got to get my workouts in. Let's start there. Okay. Let's move to the step piece. Okay. Let's get the lumen in there. Okay, let's get the intermittent fasting in. And it's working out very, very well. So I wanted to give everybody an update there on the habit tracking. And I wanted to ask you maybe one of the new habits or kind of routines that you've put in place since we've been going through the podcast here, man.
Yeah, well, I'm 14 hours into the fast right now.
Yep.
Just realized that I haven't eaten today, and I've run. But the level of clarity, and before I answer that question, the level of clarity that comes when you don't have to digest food goes to a different level.
You don't have to worry about it either, which is nice.
It's just a totally different level. So what am I doing? For the first time since I've left corporate America, I did not work for a week. And that was the first week of the second quarter. So I looked at the first quarter and actually got the final expenses for the first quarter in yesterday and smiled. But before that, we just drove revenue. We were looking at revenue numbers. What's the revenue? Right. Is it better than what we thought? How many times can we set a record in this quarter? And that for me was, okay, so stop. Then 2 days ago, I bought a car.
All right.
Right. I'd been driving my 2009 Camry for 11 years. That's 267,000 miles on it. Still works fine. In fact, I drove it on Sunday, 6 hours round trip. Right. I bought a new car, and it's like, I still like my old car. And so I have them both, right? But just the thought of, there's going to be more, right? I think it's easy when you make the transition from a paycheck, or even in sales, when you're going to do your own thing, it's easy for you to get in this place where you got to hoard it, right? You're scared that something's not going to come in. And I used to rationalize it. Look, I used to say, I don't know when more is coming, so let me hold on to this.
Yep.
Instead of knowing more that's coming, because you've done the work and you're solving a problem that is valuable for people. And there's going to be more people that need it. Right. Totally. So it's going to happen for you. And that just that one shift right there allows me to show up in a way that I hadn't shown up before, because, in my core, I am a car guy. I love cars, right? I didn't care about anything after 16 because I got my license, right? None of the other birthdays were significant.
Yeah.
Because I was free enough to drive. And now I didn't buy a Lamborghini Aventador. I'll buy one day. But I was able to buy, and I was skimping. I was negotiating the price, right? I was like, man, like, maybe if I only spend this amount, then it'll be okay for me to it rationalizing it.
Yeah.
You hear people go on a trip and they're like, oh, I only went because it was X, Y, or Z, right? I had friends there so I could stay at their place, or the flight was only $99 because of COVID. And I don't think we have to sit there in that space where it's only because. I think we can sit in the space of, this is what I wanted to do. This is the experience I wanted to create. And I created it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to rationalize or downgrade or negotiate it or make it okay that I wanted to enjoy my success.
Absolutely.
So that for me was a shift, right? Because it's just been ultra conservative. I'll never know what the properties need. I'll never know what the business needs. So I need to make sure that I stay liquid, stay available, stay in this space where I can cover the gap because I don't have enough. And the last thing I'll say is I've shared this with you. I've added to my affirmations, and I actually started speaking them aloud. I realized how much your life can change in a year.
Yeah.
If you're consistent and steady and you're committed to the outcome of the actual goal. And so the piece that I want to share with the listener is, the truth is money comes to me in excess of what I need before I need it without struggle, right? And so imagine that all the money that you need always came to you before you needed it, in excess of what you needed, and that you didn't have to struggle to get it. What if that was true for your life? Especially if you're just starting out in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
What if that was your standard? How would that change your experience? What type of certainty and confidence would that give you? I know you had a closing this week, and they're always big because of the type of deals you're doing, right? But just knowing, like, hey, this is going to happen for me because I'm doing the work. So I rambled, but
that's all right, man.
That's new.
I appreciate that. We're going to wrap up here with a quote. Of course, that's how we do it every single time. But before we do, I wanted to just say, I think that we got 52 working weeks in the year. We got 2 episodes a week dropping. So that's about 104. We're in, I think, right around the 30 mark right now. And Jerome sent me a message with some stats on the Compression Podcast. I just want to say thank you. Thank you guys for making us in the top 10% globally from a listenership standpoint. That's fantastic. Reach out to us if you got something we want to talk about. We want to engage, and probably this is coming from me listening to Mr. John Lee Dumas himself, but I'm serious. Go over to compressionpodcast.com, sign up, get the resources, but then reach out to us. We've got some ideas, putting on some events here very shortly to really help people elevate and kind of move to the next level. So just wanted to say thank you for all of the support. We're at right around episode 30. That's cool. This is a passion project for both of us, but it's turning into a movement. And I look at that word compressor every single day, confident, omnipresent, magnitude and multitude, positive, patient, present, all of these things. And it gets me moving. It gets me going. And it takes all these books that we have written and it puts it into one word, that if you strive to become, you'll become the best version of yourself. So with that said, Matthew McConaughey's favorite bumper sticker is, I am good at what I love, but I don't love all that I'm good at. I'll leave you with that, but I'll also leave you with one of my quotes from my handy dandy yellow book. Usually we get something from Drake or Beyonce or Nicki Minaj. Today, we got it from an old white guy, okay? So Theodore Roosevelt, old teddy bear, said, keep your eyes on the stars, but remember to keep your feet on the ground. And I will leave you guys with that because I want you to go out there, catch some green lights, and focus on the art of living. Jerome, do you have any other closing thoughts?
I just want to say I'm proud of you, brother. Passing the test, celebrating, closing deals. I don't think we told them what the new number is going to be, but it's next episode. You guys are going to be in for
next
a while.
Episode. You'll get the updated number. I'm trying to juice it up just a little bit more so people can say, whoa, What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened next week. Tune in. Thank you, Jerome.
All right, brother.
Hey, compressors. If something you heard struck you, made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, good. Head on over to compressionpodcast.com. And then you can also subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast at. If you feel inclined to, please leave us a review. It's obviously helpful. But instead, I'm going to call you out today. I'm going to call you out and make sure that you do your part, sharing this message by sharing it with one person that might need to hear what we talked about today. Be great. Nothing else pays.